72 hours, goddamn, I'm feeling amazing. Damn, I'm in the matrix. My mind is living on cloud nine, and this nine is never on vacation. Start up that Maserati.
Hi everybody, the King Yetu here. Hope you all fine. So the part 2 is here. In this part I asked him few questions like what about custom, leaderboard, new game modes, about modders, etc. So let's see what he say about all this. Enjoy.
Hey, morning everybody. This is Hunter Mayer again, developer on Doodle Army. Just wanted to give you guys an update on our path to alpha. We hit some hurdles, which is pretty normal for this kind of thing, especially when you're taking an old app after 2.5 years of a code base sitting dormant and then bringing it back and then firing it into the app stores. You know, lots happened in the security world and requirements for apps in the last 2.5 years. So yeah, no big surprise that there's been some hurdles. The last hurdle we think we're going to have is the app stores say the name's too similar to another app in the store. Well, yeah, it's a derivative work in a way. Well, let's say the other app is derivative work of this one, but then we're branching off from there. So it's just going to require a human to look at this and then agree with us that we're in the right. Kind of hassles you have to deal with app stores. Google Play is usually not as curated, but they do have a lot of checks in place, and rightly so. You don't want people throwing up apps that are just named slightly differently and meant to be drive traffic to, you know, whatever sources, you know, malicious hacks and what have you. King had a few more questions for me, and I'm hoping to pick off the list with these chats that I'm having here. So one of his questions was like, hey, how's this going to be different from the miniclip version? And I mean, initially the alpha and beta, there's going to be a transformation. I'll talk about that because the alpha is kind of hot. We're going to make sure that everything works the way it did back in 2018, except for purchasing, battle points, scoring, profile, and points. All that, it doesn't matter anymore. That stuff's gone because we don't have access to that data. It's all part of the other app, and the data is stored in places that it's just we can't reach into everybody's Google Play and get the scores for other games legally. I know a few of you chuckled at that, but so that being said, we've kind of have to kind of redo those areas, and so we thought, well, why don't we modernize it, take away this concept of the Pro Pack being limited, so anything that's in the game can be picked up and used when you're playing online. That was always true. Offline play, there was no limits to what you could do, and we really liked that, and that's where the game was kind of born, from that peer-to-peer play, and it's its truest form. The online stuff, just because there was costs involved in maintaining servers and keeping all that data for everybody, is expensive, so we have to put some kind of payment system in place, and that's why we tacked on the idea of Pro Pack. But that was a long time ago, and it's a nearly decade-old idea and approach. So we saw the miniclip approach, which was kind of really take a real modern approach to the gotcha system, and use that as a way to monetize inside with all the different graphics. That takes a high level of curation to manage, and that's something that miniclips really excels at. So I look at all their other games, and that's one of the reasons we were drawn to them. Oh, they can make all this content that everybody's been asking for. So Now flip back to us, and we're really concerned about what we can do. We can't reach that far with content and curation, so our approach as a company has been to create tools to let people create their own content, and that's something we'll ultimately see. But back to this topic on the path from alpha to beta. The alpha is going to very much be just standing up what was stood up back in April 2018. We're going to vet that. There's a handful of folks who are volunteering their time, and they're going to crash into the wall that is the alpha over and over, and I really appreciate that. And I'm sure links will go out if people want to participate in that, and come on, more the merrier. The more we pile on, the faster we'll see where things are broken, and we'll have a Google group set up to channel all that feedback so everybody can start talking about it, and we'll be there to kind of read through what's going on and send out announcements via that channel too. So that's kind of already set up. We're going to send out links to that here as soon as we know we've got a viable internal testing will show that we've got a viable distribution we can send out. So little hoops we got to jump through to get to the actual alpha. And then once the alpha is actually running, then we're looking at kind of transforming those areas that are broken. First thing we're going to do is start with the servers. A lot more of the logic for the game needs to move to be managed by the server. And that's a pretty big change. So it's really important that the alpha shows us that everything's kind of operational the way it was. We'll get confident with that, and then we can move forward. The changes that we're going to see as we move through the beta are going to start with those servers. Then points are going to start to accumulate. That's going to change how we display the profile. And then also, as you earn points, that's going to fuel the ability to use the loadout system, which we'll introduce more as we get along. We've got some stuff coming along. It's in early development phase, put it that way. And we'll have more to say about that as we get closer to loadout. I know people are going to be really anxious about that, probably good and bad, because it is a big change to how the game is played. And we really want to address imbalance issues. But in the same token, the loadout system is meant to make decisions. If it's important that you have better strategies against certain attacks, then this is where your opportunity to be better at those things will be. And you'll have to make some choices. You'll see in a lot of our game design, it's all about choice. Like, which weapon do you pick up? Why can I only carry 2? And that's an important distinction. That you have to pick up 2 weapons, and that choice you made needs to affect the rest of the game. What do I leave behind? What do I pick up? What do I carry? In this case, what loadout do I enter into the game with? Given what just happened to me or what the battlefield awareness is going on, you'll have to make some quick choices. And that's where the deepest strategies will lie. In some cases, it's going to be the edge you need to pull ahead and counter other people's offensives. And if they're not flexible enough to adjust to your adjustments, then victory will be a little bit harder for them to obtain through just raw skill in that regard. And those kinds of things have always excited us. So that's what we're hoping the loadout system brings to the table, along with replacing our outdated concept of a pro pack. We're going to get away from that, and that way anything in the game, when you're playing the game online or offline, if it's there, there's not going to be any interruptions. And we just can't figure out how to make the pro pack model not reach into the game and actually affect gameplay. That's why we want to remove it, and make this a little bit different. Now, that means the loadout system is going to need balancing, because if someone drops in with sniper all the time because they dropped a bunch of coin, that's not how we want this system to be used. You know, where you get to pick what you come in with. But, you know, there has to be a cost, there has to be a trade-off. So the balancing hooks that we see us having to contend with is, how do we balance loadout? How do we make sure that games are fair? And if a loadout is getting heavily used on one side, what does the other side get in effect to do some balancing? So there's some choices to be made. When people spend in the loadout system, we want to make sure that everybody else has an opportunity to respond to that. So there's a lot of challenges that are going to be in there. I think when we make this change, I think a lot of tuning will have to occur with that. It's risk. It's a little scary to think about how disruptive it could be, but we're starting over, so it's going to be pretty much that same gameplay. So the loadout system isn't really going to change much in regards to the gameplay, but it might affect how you go into a game or what thinking you go about it. So there's not to say that it's not going to be different. It is going to be different, but we hope it's different in a good way and for all the right reasons that, you know, the game needs. So that's not a classic idea though. So that's getting into the point where we have to kind of go off in our own direction with the game and then see where that goes. That all being said, there are other areas that are going to get altered too. Custom needs to have kind of a retrofit so that the games are better suited for having things expanded upon, like different game modes and more custom settings, up to and including how much does payload have an effect. So if you want to remove payload in its entirety, you could absolutely do that in the custom area. So a lot of times people want to have as fair a match as possible, right? And that is a totally legitimate concern with the payload system. Is it going to be fair? Is it, you know, and if it isn't, then custom's going to be a place where you can avoid that type of play, and then have, you know, set limits on how much any single player can spend their points on in loadout, and then also maybe a team cap too. And again, there's all the other balancing issues that have to go along with that. But loadout aside, we already talked that to death. So just talking about custom in general, we're going to change how maps are loaded and all the configuration data that goes with it. It's a slight change. We're still going to use tiled, and we'll make those tiled sets available for people to play with. There's an app called Tiled, and that's something that you can use to make these maps with and start it. The other configuration portions of it, stuff like where does CTF spawn points, what are the spawn points for just general deathmatch, what weapons spawn and where. That's the kind of thing that we need to tweak in a way that makes sense for people to set up highly customized games. And the point is that we're kind of trying to get to with that is that we want to get to the point where you don't have to have a mod to have something as simple as a sniper raid game or just a weird map that, you know, is kind of fun to share with people. And then also make it so that the clients can ingest that modified game data on the fly. So these are some huge challenges that have to be overcome, and it's a risk to open stuff up like that. And it does make some challenges on the security side and back end side. But we're hoping that we've seen such a significant number of modifications that we thought, well, let's just make it so that mods don't matter as much. I mean, there'll always be a place for doing mods because people are going to want to change a lot of their stuff, and hopefully they keep doing it in a way that doesn't afflict the system. Like, you'll hear me say this all the time, your mods shouldn't change the rules of engagement for one or more parties to a benefit. So if everybody enjoys and suffers from the same, well, that's kind of a legitimate mod. Hopefully not suffering, but I guess some people have found out game design is not necessarily the easiest thing to come by in regards to choices that mods make. Sometimes people trying things out on a whim. So we're hoping to create an environment that we can try out more different ideas faster and then ingest those things into popularized game modes. Maybe not just quick play, kind of creating an environment that 90% of the rest of the environment or the rest of the users can enjoy. Probably should wrap up this question. It's one that can go on because a lot of it's speculation too, but so the things that are really going to be different are leaderboards are going away and getting replaced with our own in-house leaderboards that are more meaningful. The store is going to be absorbed into the loadout system. So the store items that you would normally have to play with, those will become part of the loadout system. It's not going to be an exact one-to-one, but it'll be close. And we think it'll be tougher. And we like the idea of choice and being limited on choices, because that's when you have to be clever players. And the more choices we give that impact the game and allow you to adjust your strategies on the fly, to us makes this a much more interesting game. And we hope you all agree too as we go forward. And then the last thing we're really hoping to achieve by the end of the beta is a much more highly customizable system. Now, it may not appear to have much customization at first, but all the changes we're making under the hood are to support this idea of game modes, more than just CTF. So when you go into custom, you'll decide whether or not you're going to join a custom deathmatch game or a CTF game or payload or any kind of different games out there that might make sense for us to run with it. We've got a mini royale game cooking up in our heads that we think will be pretty fun, fast and furious, and allow for some highs and lows in the competitive arena there, and just see how it comes out on top. We think the leaderboards are probably going to be a huge place because it's also going to show us where we've got weaknesses. If we leaderboard the right stuff, we'll be able to draw some conclusions and make adjustments based on what's happening. So yeah, we're excited about it. Hope you guys are too. It's going to be a long road, from alpha to beta. Hopefully it doesn't take a long time, but we'll open it up. Anybody who wants to participate will have stuff up shortly as we transition from alphas to beta. And we may keep 2 separate groups actually for these different tests, but depending on how close to the metal do you want to be, you're going to feel every bump in the alpha. Like, there's going to be days that it just doesn't work, and we're just going to have to be prepared for that. And as we make changes, you could be in the middle of a game and everything dumps. So it's just, we'll try to warn everybody if we know something's going on, but just, you're going to be living really close to us while we're working it's tumultuous, and there's going to be a core group of people who put up with that and make this game as good as it can be at launch, and then we'll continue to get user feedback, because it's where this game was born from. And clearly one of its strengths is that we listen. Now, we don't do everything what everybody says, but we listen to what everybody says, and that says a lot, I think. Shows up in the final product. Even if we can't get everybody's hopes and dreams in there. Not that they're bad ideas, it's just there's a lot to do, and we have to pick and choose. Well, I hope I answered one more question, with probably generated dozens of other questions, but give us time. Time will tell what gets done and what doesn't. And, I'd love to sit here and promise you guys the world, but there's only so much time in the day, so we'll do our best to line everything up with expectations. But get involved in the alpha and the beta, and we'll go from there, and we'll see what happens. And if you want to be close to it or be surprised at the end, then that's a choice too. But I thank everybody for sticking this out, and we're taking some risks with everything that we've done in the last couple of years to see if we can make this a better game. And you learn from those movements, and then you make decisions and go different directions and try different things. And we're going to try to have the best of all worlds, and we'll get Classic out there for everybody to re-enjoy that offline Wi-Fi play and customized and modified gameplay that there's a demand for that, and hopefully it's entertaining, because why do people keep doing it if it's not entertaining? So there must be something there. So we're just going to take it a day at a time and get this back out there and see what we can do. All right, thanks everybody. I'll hope to talk to you guys again soon, weather permitting. It's getting pretty stormy out here these days. It's getting harder and harder to have these talks, but it seems to be my best opportunity to do any recording. There's no time to do anything. You can't do anything in, everything has to be doubled up. Like, you have a meal, you gotta do some reading with it, or you gotta do some work. You gotta do something along with everything else. You can never just do one thing. So it's a hectic pace, and we're hoping that once we get everything in the store and things chill out a little bit, we don't want to go back to this 7 days a week, 12, 16 hours a day. It's pretty brutal. Doable, but brutal in the short term. But that's what we're doing now, so we'll keep banging on the anvil, and we'll see what comes out of it. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.